Hello and welcome to the Berkcast, the How to Train a Dragon podcast. I'm your host who's recovering from a sequence HC, and with me are.
Rush 2112, who has mouth sores.
And Wolf.
Yeah, as you can see, we're all recovering from the weather because that's what the weather does to you. But the show must go on. And today we are going to compare how everyone's favorite sequel, How to Train a Dragon 2, to the other Dreamworks sequels which came out over the years. Now, what we mean by sequels are only the number two films, which means Shrek 2, Madagascar 2, and Kung Fu Panda 2. Any threes or fours or future sequels that are coming out are not don't count for this topic. Unless, of course, you count Boss Baby 2, which will obviously be the best sequel of the bunch.
Sure.
As you can tell, no, it's not going to be a good sequel because apparently the original is not that good. I don't know. Anyway, let's start this thing. So the reason we're doing this is because little old me overthinking stuff. Go figure. I noticed that a lot of actually all the DreamWorks sequels have this kind of formula where we'll talk about something that happens before the events of the first film. Like in Shrek 2, we are told why Fiona's in the tower and was in the tower in the first place. Her parents put her there because of her curse. And in Madagascar 2, we see how Alex got caught and separated from his family and put in the zoo. And in Kung Fu Panda 2, we're told about Shen and how he, pretty much murdered most of Poe's village. So we have these little things that happened before the first movie and are only now coming into play. So do you think How to Train Your Dragon 2 follows that formula?
Technically, I mean, we do see. I guess we learned from Hiccup's past, like how Hiccup got that little scar. If anyone noticed that or cared,
And what happened to his mom.
and what happened to his mom.
Well, his mom was always to me, at least watching the first movie, his mom was kind of like the generic. It's an animated kids movie. One of the parents has to die. It's kind of a thing. If you haven't noticed, but but in the second one we do know what happened to her exactly and why she wasn't there. But at the same time, the movie doesn't really revolve around that as much, and we're also told about and we're also seeing this way later into the film. Like it doesn't start with it. Or if you want a better example, Stoic's flashback to Drago and how we first came across Drago, and that's also something that could count towards this thing. But again, it's not the focus as much as it is with the other films, I think.
I think it is though, probably even more so. I mean, because look at the connecting factor between Madagascar 2, Kung Fu Panda 2, and Shrek 2, right? It's all
Yeah.
about the past coming back to now affect what's happening in the present. Like things that happened in the past are now affecting the present in some way, shape, or form. And I would say that the past of Stoic and Volca are now affecting what's happening in the present. Stoic's past with Drago and Volca and Stoic's past with each other and what happened there is all affecting what's happening with Hiccup right here and now.
Mhm.
And I don't think this is just a DreamWorks thing. I think this is just a sequels thing in general because as you expand on the story and expand on the world there, you do have to address what might have come before. So I think that's just a sequel thing in general to kind of reflect on the past a little bit and move
Yeah,
forward.
but
But
the I get what you mean, and yeah, a lot of sequels do that, but there's something about the way DreamWorks does it,
yeah,
which
I would say like Shrek 2, Madagascar 2, and Kung Fu Panda 2 definitely have a lot of similarities in how they reflect on that
because
past and how it affects the character and their
because the movie
current.
starts with those. You know what I mean? That's the
Mhm.
first thing you see when you put the movie on.
I do think How to Train Your Dragon tries to, and I think they do change it up a lot. Like How to Train Your Dragon 2 has that, but it does it very differently from what the other
Yeah.
DreamWorks films do it.
Because we're opening up with seeing where the characters are now instead of a flashback. Like we don't open with a flashback to Stuart seeing Drago for the first time, or with a flashback of Valka being abducted by Cloudjumper. We just start and we get to those stories later on as the plot goes on.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, yeah, it does follow the formula, but it also throws its own spin, I guess. Because I also think that well, yeah, Wolf, you do have a point that these flashbacks do matter to the story. They're not, at least I don't think they're as big of a part.
Well, they're
Of
not
it.
the
Like,
they're not the focus. Hiccup
yeah,
is
they're
the
not,
focus, so it's
Yeah,
kind of
I
like
was gonna say
by proxy.
in my little piece where I have
Go ahead.
minor mouth pain, that it's only really apparent in Kung Fu Panda 2 and How to Train Your Dragon 2 that this formula affects our main character. Let's say Madagascar 2. Alex really doesn't get any character growth. I mean, he finds out who he is, quote unquote, but he's still the same kind of lion in the end.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and
We
also
go Shrek 2. Not really. Shrek isn't really supposed to have character growth. He's just supposed, well, other than like being more accepting, but that was really all done in the first movie. So
if anything, the character that gets more growth in Shrek 2 regarding all of this is Fiona's father rather than Shrek. And in Madagascar, you do have a point because I know I said we're not counting the other sequels, but jumping a bit ahead, him meeting his family doesn't really matter in the grand scale of things when you get to the third one as well. You know what I mean?
I think that's just because Madagascar and Shrek are very much comedies first, right?
Yeah, that's also
So
something to keep in
for
mind.
them, like character growth and story growth isn't as important so long as it's
Yeah,
funny
but
and
then
meaningful.
again, you could say that Kung Fu Panda 2 is also a comedy, and the backstory there
Eh,
is
I would disagree. Kung Fu Panda 2, yeah, it has its comedic moments and it's definitely more centered on comedy than say How to Train Your Dragon is, but it definitely like I don't think it doesn't shy away from storytelling because it literally goes out of its way to say, "Hey, this guy, this villain right here, he killed Poe's parents."
yeah.
At that time,
Although
that's what you're
uh,
led to believe. Like he killed Poe's entire village, their parents, everything,
it's
just
not what you like
because
to believe. It's there. You see it. That's the thing that happens.
I say led to believe because of the third movie, but yeah, like he definitely did this, right? So I feel like Kung Fu Panda 1 might have been more comedic in its nature, but Kung Fu Panda 2 definitely stepped more towards like we actually want to
Yeah,
tell a
true, but
story and grow these
that's another.
characters.
But that's also another thing that since it's a sequel, and you're probably going into Kung Fu Panda 2, like forget that we saw the movie and we know what it's like. You are probably going to see it. You probably figured it's going to be a comedy based on the first one.
For sure.
And also, when you put Jack Black's name on your poster, you're kind of going in with a comedic mindset.
but like I know this
So,
isn't the podcast, but I really enjoy like despite it being Jack Black for what all he's been all of his typecasting. I really enjoy what they do with the character. How it's really this is
definitely.
like the lovable goofball to the extreme because he actually
Mhm.
has he's not most of the time in my opinion lovable goofballs stay goofballs like most of the time, but like what they've done with Kung Fu Panda is really made a character who knows when it's time to get serious, and when he does, it's very good. He knows what he has to do. He just has to do it in his own way. Oh wait, that's the third movie. Either way,
Yeah, agreed. I see what you're talking about. Um, so yeah, you can also say that it depends on the genre, but I think also when we really look at this in the other three sequels we mentioned, Madagascar, Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, you kind of need those flashbacks in order to get the story. Like if you cut the flashbacks in How to Train Your Dragon 2, it wouldn't really change much. Like,
Yeah, I
go
would
ahead.
agree. Yeah, I would agree. I don't think it would change all that much really and take away from anything. You might lose some context maybe, but at the same time, I don't think it would outright change the
What are you guys
viewing of the
talking
movie.
about? We would never know where Hiccup got that scar from.
This is true,
It ruins the whole movie.
and that is very important.
Well,
0 out of 10.
That
Not
tiny
Okay.
scar that no one noticed until they pointed it out.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool thing to point out when you go back to the first movie after the second one and you see that he had that scar the entire time. And then they added the scar to the rest of the Edge model because, consistency. Well, so anyway, the basic takeaway from this discussion is that, yeah, it follows the formula, but it also does its own thing with it.
It tries to play with it, and I think that's a good thing because you definitely can start to see, like, if you look at a lot of the DreamWorks films, a very familiar formula that they go with, and it's good to see them play with that because it means they're trying something different, and that's always good.
Yep. Okay. So here's another thing I thought about. Like, it's worth bringing up that, at least regarding Shrek 2, Madagascar 2, and Kung Fu Panda 2, all of these sequels are, for the most part, considered better than the originals. While with How to Train Your Dragon, as we know, look at us, um, uh, there's still a bit of a debate which film is better, with the majority leaning towards the first one. The majority is wrong in this case, but that's another story. So, what causes this, in your opinion?
Oh, I honestly don't know for this one because I think you're going to get a different answer from everyone you ask.
Well,
Just
that's
about.
why it's an interesting discussion, Wolf.
Well, you go first then, HC.
Yeah, really.
Okay, throwing me under the bus. Oh, fun. Anyway,
Standard Berkcast.
I think that, at least, with the first three, like we said, um, people are going into this, into each one of these films expecting a comedy, in a sense, because the original Shrek was a comedy, the original Madagascar was a comedy, the original Kung Fu Panda, while deeper, was also, for the most part, a comedy. So when you go into a comedy sequel, you don't expect that level of character development and the story progression, because the one thing, you'll probably hear about each one of those films is that, one of the things people like about them the most is that they're not just rehashing the original like a lot of other comedy sequels do. They move the plot along. They're not stuck in place. You see a continuation. You see what happened next. The story goes on. While with How to Train Your Dragon, again, the first movie has a lot of comedic moments. I'm not saying it doesn't, but at the same time, people probably just went in with a certain set of expectations than the other three. Like, they already know, okay, this is not your traditional animated movie. There's something more here. So when you see a sequel to that, you have a different set of expectations in terms of tone, in terms of the story, in terms of what the characters do. So I guess it's just a matter of how you approach the film. And also, I think, one other thing is that all the other sequels are at least hinted to be taking place right after each other, maybe a few months tops. With How to Train Your Dragon 2, we have a 5-year gap between the first and the second one. So there's a lot more to take in with the sequel, which people could either like or not like. We've seen how some people didn't really like a grown-up Hiccup. So that's my take on it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, one of the arguments against the second movie, Hiccup's not supposed to be hot.
Yeah, true. I think was it with the confessions we
Hmm.
saw this.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing when the second movie was first being announced.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
was a thing that people
People
had an
were,
issue with, which were, people will be people, which is weird.
How shallow.
yeah, yeah. Him- the
Hmm.
world, the world is split into three types of people: people who like hot Hiccup, people who don't like hot Hiccup, and my mother who doesn't think Hiccup is hot at all.
Fair enough.
I thought it was. I thought the joke went. There are three types of people: those who can count and those who can't.
What's the
Ha.
third one?
The third one is the people who don't
That,
understand the joke.
that works too.
Anyway,
Uh, oh god. Okay, well, you can't hide. I said my thoughts regarding this. What do you have to say?
ow.
Ow! You outright said, "HC, you go first." I went first.
I know.
No escape.
I'm just in pain. Anyway, I'll fight through it. Um, yeah, I unfortunately really don't have much input on this. I mean, Wolf pretty much said it all. You ask the people, you're gonna get different answers. Some people like the original just because the original has the charm of the series. It's what people get their expectations from. And even though, in terms of let's say animation, story, and plot development and character development, it may be better. But if it doesn't hold true to the original values, sometimes people get all up in arms, even though if those original values were dumb jokes. Not really calling anyone out, but just like that's sometimes what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's the easiest one to look at is like Kung Fu Panda 2, right? And I think one of the biggest things for Kung Fu Panda 2 is that you'll hear everyone say, and I've said it as well, is that Kung Fu Panda 2 looked at what the first movie did well and then looked at what the first movie didn't do as well and said, okay, let's fix that. Let's, give you a villain that's way more interesting, way more engaging, way more enjoyable. And just, an overall better villain. Let's give you, more. Let's just take this, do more with it, and fix the things that were wrong. For How to Train
Mm-hmm.
Your Dragon, and maybe I'm definitely coming from a biased place, but the first movie didn't really do all that much wrong. Like it's actually one of those few movies where everything it
Yeah,
needed to do, it did fairly well, if not really
yeah.
great at.
People do say that one of its biggest strengths is, and I can say that too, is that it's one of the most technically perfect films that exist.
Hmm. Like the only weakness I would say the first movie had was taking, was how they handled Astrid's character nearer to the end of the film, and how she definitely felt
Well,
less
but
like she did at the first of the film. Like it definitely, like, she takes a very drastic 180 turn
yeah, we
kind of
we
out of
had a
nowhere.
we had a
And we've
big
had,
discussion about this,
yeah.
but again, when I say technically perfect,
Oh yeah, no.
it's we're not talking in terms of fans going back and overanalyzing this.
Oh sure.
Again, when you are a movie critic who just goes to see the movie in order to do your job, you don't really notice this kind of stuff. If anything, it's character development. You accept it.
Sure. Like my point was going from going from that complaint that I've had to looking at the second film. I don't really know if they improved Astrid's character. I don't know if they really did, because they really didn't do a whole lot with Astrid's character in the second film. She was there and she did some stuff, sure, but I don't know that we got anything majorly new from her, other than her and Hiccup are in a relationship, and she's definitely improved and learned to live with dragons. You could definitely go into more detail about all of that, I'm sure, and we most certainly have in the past, but
Hmm.
there's not a lot for the second film to improve on. So the second film, I feel, has to do a lot like it just has to be more different. Like that's what the second film has to do because again, like you said, like the first film was very much in many regards technically perfect, right? Or technically very well done. So how do you go where do you go from there? Like you can't exactly move up, right? So it's very much a lateral move where the lateral move has to be vastly different in order to really shine or really, stand out from the original. And I think they definitely tried. I think the second film definitely tries to be different and tries to say, well, hey, we'll just go bigger. Maybe that's what we need to do. And I think, again, I don't hate the second film. I think the second film is exceptionally good. I think you should absolutely watch it if you haven't, right? Obviously, when I
And
say that, I'm a
if
fan, but
and if you haven't watched it, why the hell are you listening to this podcast? I mean,
good point.
honestly.
But,
I just asked why they're
I
listening to
do
the
think,
podcast
right, that
anyway, but whatever.
it's hard to say, this is why the second movie isn't regarded as well as the first, when it's very much what could they have done to do better, right? Now, when we have the third film, right, like we can look at the second film and say, and we'll have the second film to compare it to. And you might actually see a lot more people say, hey, the third film was better than the second. You might actually hear me come back and say, hey, I like the third film more than the second film.
Well, it's a
Or the
possibility.
first. It's very much it'll be interesting to hear people compare all three films and talk about them when the third film finally
Yes.
comes out.
And speaking of which, if we said everything we have to say on the matter, like Hidden World is just a few months away. We are so close to it. We're all excited. We're all hyped, and yeah, sure, keep telling yourself that. But what I do want to say is that how do you think Hidden World is going to compare to the third entries in those franchises once it's out? Because each franchise kind of approached it's number three differently. Like because Shrek the Third is pretty much just another movie in the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much Shrek the Third is very much kind of going more back to the comedy route because we've kind of where do they take the story after the second one, right? It's the second film felt like it kind of ended that story more or less, so we had to have a reason to kind of
but again
bring everyone back.
Yeah, but forget the quality, forget what you think about the movie for a second. When you look at it at face value, what was really accomplished with the third one? Nothing. Like in the overall Shrek saga, this is really the one that doesn't move the plot along. Like you have the first one, which starts the whole thing. The second one tells you what happens next, and then the fourth one finishes it until the fifth one comes out for some reason. And yeah, I know the reason is money, figure of speech. But now, Madagascar 3, for all intents and purposes, kind of went into this, was kind of like, yeah, let's forget that they're making a fourth one for a second. They seem to kind of go into this one knowing they're going to close to close the business afterwards. This was supposed to be the last. They treated it as if it's the last one, and Kung Fu Panda 3 kind of does the same thing. Although Jeffrey Katzenberg did say that in his vision, Kung Fu Panda is a 6-film franchise, so we don't really know.
Jeffrey Katzenberg, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, is no longer in charge of Dreamworks. So,
but the thing, it makes you wonder if they had that plan scheduled before the migration to Comcast, and Comcast just said, "Sure, let's go."
Because
there's nobody is better about exploiting content for money than Comcast.
This is true.
There's something interesting about this because apparently he said it as soon as the first movie hit, So and then when the third one came out, the director said, "You know what? We're not sure. We went into the third one knowing that we want to close the story and have a fitting conclusion. Like if we'll have an idea for another one, we'll do it. But nothing is nothing is thought of. Like it's not in our thoughts at the moment." So who knows? Maybe now that Comcast is in charge, they say, "You know what? Kung Fu Panda is a franchise that make." There you go. They just made a new show, didn't they? On
Did they?
Amazon. I saw a trailer for something.
I don't know. I don't keep up with Kung Fu Panda, I will admit.
There was a trailer on the Dreamworks YouTube page, so
Yeah.
that's what I know. I'm not sure if it's out or if it's about to come out, but apparently it's a franchise they want to keep alive. So I won't be surprised if they'll announce a fourth one sometime. But anyway, so we have one film that's just like, another film in the franchise, and we have two that are kind of try to close every tie that possible, and are possibly getting a sequel now. And then we have How to Train Your Dragon, which, if you look at the marketing, even for Madagascar 3 and Kung Fu Panda 3, which were supposed to be the last one in the creator's eyes at the time, none of those were advertised as the conclusion of the story as Hidden World does.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's almost like just from the get go. Like let's say for Madagascar, you could take that as a standalone film. You don't need to have the next ones. But like, and even when it's done, it's not like, hey, the director's outright. It doesn't have such a cult following that the director's saying, hey, we're gonna do 3 of these, right? No, for the How to Train Your Dragon universe, it's like Dean said, basically after the first movie started or finished, he's like, yeah, I only want to do 3 of these, right? And that at the time was like saying, oh, so he's just gonna do 3. There could be more, right? But then we get closer and closer to the second movie, maybe even a little bit after the second movie. He's like, yeah, we're gonna have the next movie, How the Dragon's Left. It's just casual, right? It's like, don't do this to us, Dean. But it was more confirmed about this series, I believe, than the other series. Granted, now that Comcast owns DreamWorks, again, I go back to the content exploitation. Who knows how long they'll take it. I know that Dean will not stand to direct another one. He has made it very clear that he will not.
And I think, and we talked about this a lot. We'll probably talk about this a lot in the future as well. But there's also a chance that if they'll ever make another How to Train Your Dragon movie, there's also a good chance that it will go the Puss in Boots route and not necessarily focus on Hiccup.
This is true, and I have said in the past that I would be perfectly fine if they did something like that, right? Like I think I could get behind that more than just say, hey, it's Hiccup in a 4th movie. Following his journey and story. It's like, meh.
But that's actually another thing, because again, I think, don't quote me on this. I'll Google it as soon as we talk. But again, none of the, like, when you advertise a film with the epic conclusion to something, then again you set the expectations that this is the last one. This is the fitting conclusion, and I don't think they'll just say it into actually what I'm talking about. Shrek 4 was literally called Shrek the final chapter, and they're making a 5th one. So whatever, mute point. But
Was it called? It was called Shrek Forever After, not Shrek the Final Chapter.
no, I think over here it was actually called Shrek the Final Chapter.
Oh, but that's translation stuff, though, so that could be finicky.
Well, but again, the point is someone gave an okay on this.
But again, listening to you and how you've talked about a lot of the translations that come where that happen where you're from and everything, I wouldn't trust your translators.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't
AC,
trust any.
you should probably always go with the original translation because, like,
But here's the thing:
words
it's
don't have
not.
direct translations. So,
Again, I know what you guys are talking about. Trust me, I do. But I think it was just you know how different regions have different like you know how Zootopia is Metropolis in Europe. I think it was something along those lines that in some regions it was just known as Shrek the Final Chapter.
yeah,
Fair,
but
I
you
mean,
shouldn't
yeah,
let
fair
it.
enough.
It shouldn't. I guess it shouldn't affect the bearing on the conversation about how it was deemed the last movie, just because it was
Hmm.
called that. We have another movie,
Well,
even though it was called The Last Jedi.
hmm. But this has something to do with the plot of the film. I'm assuming I haven't seen that, but uh, but you know, going back to what I want to say, the new Kung Fu Panda show, which is called The Path of Destiny, I looked it up right now. It's on Amazon Prime. Watch it if you want. Apparently, it takes place after Kung Fu Panda 3, and it still stars Poe. So again, Hidden World being the final movie in the Dean directs doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the franchise. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of Hiccup.
Yeah, no,
Mm,
that's what I said. That's what I said earlier. It's just because
yeah.
Dean said he's done doesn't mean Comcast. Has.
Mm.
I'm done with How to Train Your Dragon. Comcast,
Yeah.
no,
But then again, but
you're
then again,
never
there,
done.
but, but then again, there is something interesting about this because as of now, I guess I'm not sure how much because they distribute the film or something, but how much input does Comcast have on the marketing?
Great
I
question.
mean,
Because that line had to go through someone. Someone had to see that line and say, you know what? Yes, this could be in the trailer. We need to like the audience needs to know this going into the film that this is the last one. At least in the original trilogy.
but you mean for How to Train Your Dragon?
Yes,
That wasn't a line that was in the trailer, was it?
it was in the first one. They said the epic conclusion.
Oh, well, yeah.
Well, I
I
mean,
mean,
maybe it's just the epic conclusion of the storyline.
Hmm. Yeah, like I said, but there is, what are my points regarding this again, Dan? Like I said, sickness people, it's not fun. Don't be sick
yeah.
at all. Be healthy. Take pills and stuff. But okay. So my final point regarding this is that Hidden World does at least attempt to to be a final the final swan song for this franchise, but uh, as opposed to Kung Fu Panda and Madagascar and Shrek, but at the same time, I won't be surprised if there are any others. Although they do seem to advertise to really advertise that it's going to be the final saying, supposedly.
Okay, and
And that's it. That's all I have to say.
hmm, thank you.
Fair enough.
Thank you, and thank you too.
We're all a bit out of it. Don't worry. Um, but yeah, just it's really hard just to compare movies about different subjects to other movies, especially if you're categorizing them by the point of release in the series related to the
Mhm.
others. So mostly because we're the Berkcast, we have biases here. If we had a better or a Dreamworks film we liked more, maybe we'd still be doing the Berkcast. But you know,
Mhm.
it clearly shows like how we may have missed some things or overlooked some things. And then in that last point, as for the Hidden World, it's not out yet, and isn't it the last like big DreamWorks film to get a third movie, pretty much at this point.
Um,
I mean, there's only been these four franchises that have actually gotten as of now, these four franchises are the only films that have made it to a second film, and a third film. Madagascar, Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, and How to Train Your Dragon are the only films that DreamWorks has put out that have like, hey, this is the third film in this franchise.
Mhm.
Otherwise, all of DreamWorks stuff is solo stuff.
Yeah.
The Croods will be the fifth one to get a sequel, as well as
Isn't Boss
Trolls
Baby?
and Boss Baby as well. Yeah, for some
I
reason.
guess
And
they're
Trolls.
moving on to get their second movies out, but they're in love. I guess you know what we can. This is like probably a conversation for a different time, but we could move on to say like, okay, here's the first age of DreamWorks, which is the franchises that got like the series out of them. Good series. And then I guess this is the next stage of Disney of sequel. DreamWorks.
Next stage of Disney. What the hell?
Well,
What's
because
going
you
on?
hear about like the golden age and silver age of comics, and then Disney also has one apparently. So that's I didn't want to go that route, but
Oh boy, can't wait for the DreamWorks live action remixes.
that are actually just very, very, very well done CGI. Anyway,
On that note, why does The Lion King need a remake, and why is it called CGI live action when it's all CGI? Sorry, I had to just get it out of the way.
that's why I just made. You don't always have to explicitly state it. See, sometimes you can throw shade like I did. Anyway,
I'm interested in watching that film. I think it'll be interesting to see.
You're fired. Goodbye.
Eh.
You lose. Good day to you.
You don't fire Wolf. Wolf fires you.
Mm-hmm.
I created the Berkcast, so yeah, he's fired. He was a guest on.
So without HC here. Oh no.
I said it once and I said it again. Rush, you're a pussy. That's all I have to say.
Very nice.
Okay, before this gets out of control.
Oh, that's
said
way too late.
classy, but anyways.
Okay.
Classic.
Gate C.
Classic. You using a joke from a movie that 2 months ago. Classic.
But, yeah, I would say I'm interested to see, right, how things will be compared with a third movie from How to Train Your Dragon. I'm interested to see like how it'll shake up and where it'll stand. Personally, I think you'll see a lot of people say, "Hey, this is better than the second film," especially people who, like me, maybe didn't like the second film as much. You might hear them say, like, "Hey, this is way better than the second film." Then again, you might hear them say, "This is worse than the second film." To me, I find it interesting because I know why I didn't like the second film as much, right? And for me, that was very much I enjoyed the I guess you could say I enjoyed the technical aspect of the first film and kind of what it did, especially with silence. And the second film moved away from that quite considerably so. And I'm curious to see if the third film will go back to that or still continue on the same path as How to Train Your Dragon 2 has. And saying that, right, like again, I still say like the second film is still a good film. It's still a great film even. And it's still worth your time. It's still worth the watch. So I'm very much interested to see where things shake up with the third film. And looking back at DreamWorks' past with the third film in their franchises, I don't think any of the third films in the other four franchises and the three franchises that we've talked about were bad by any means, right? Kung Fu Panda 3 was very good. Madagascar 3 is also very good. I think Madagascar 3 personally was the best out of these three, right?
Debatable, but I can see where you're coming from.
I think like for me, Madagascar 3 very much kind of, hey, this is a comedy, but it actually does have some plot,
biggest
some story, there's some character
It was
development there,
it was
and
actually interesting. It wasn't
like it definitely
as a comedy.
surprised me.
Yeah.
I think HC nails it very, very well. Right? Like it definitely surprised me with what they did for Madagascar 3. I didn't expect it. Kung Fu Panda 3, it's again, it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's just Kung Fu Panda 2 stole the show there.
Yeah.
Right. Like
the
second
ending
film
of
for Kung Fu
Panda really does it for me there.
I just don't think they could have. They set themselves a very high bar at the top. Again, it's the same problem with the first How to Train Your Dragon movie. Kung Fu Panda 2 was, for all intents and purposes, technically, was done technically, was extremely great, was extremely well done,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to move up from there. So
Mhm.
it's that problem of the best we can do is make a lateral move and hope you like it.
I know that this, since I'm only in this fandom, I could be just saying this out of complete how I've been following it, but it feels like, for one, how long they've taken to stretch out the franchise. I feel like they've put a lot more work into this, or at least Dean personally has, than, let's say, the other franchises had their directors. Not saying that they didn't put work into it, but it just feels like Dean is incredibly dedicated to the movies as opposed to what others may be, right? Um, Wolf, you did say something about how the other ones set a very high bar, and I just wanted to say that it's not that they missed the bar; it's that they hit their head on it. They almost reached it.
Fair enough. I think like the only movie that really, kind of surpassed the bar was Madagascar 3, right? Like it's the only one that
Yes.
managed to grab onto the bar and jump up a little bit higher than the second film.
Hmm.
The third
Yeah.
Shrek film was pretty much it's Shrek.
Yeah. For
Nothing wrong with
and
that,
yeah,
but
and if
it
we're
is what it
talking about
is.
bars, it's like, I feel like you can get a general consensus about those franchises, but for How to Train Your Dragon 2, it's like they're pretty much even. Just with the general consensus, the bars are very even there, and so,
Hmm.
you know, I feel like if How to Train Your Dragon 3 isn't above that standard, if it's on standard, people are gonna just say, yeah, it's as good as the rest, right? I feel like
Mhm.
they're gonna downplay it if it's not above the standard, which I think may be
It'll be
unfair to the
yeah,
movie.
it'll be interesting to see if it actually does worse.
Not
I'll be
Yeah.
worse.
interested to see that because
I'm saying, like, even if, let's say, it does it as well as the other two movies, right? But
mhm.
because the other two movies are such a high standard, they're like, well, I expect it to be even better than what the other two movies have been, right? Some people are like that, and I think we
Mhm.
need to. I feel like I might need to go with that mindset. The 5 times I'm watching to go through: one, to enjoy the movie; two, to see how the plot is; three, animation; four, sound quality; and then five, because I would just want to watch it again.
And 6 is Hiccup Hut.
That's my subconscious watching that movie every day, man.
Fair enough.
I think, something, let's just close this entire discussion with every time we ask something about this franchise, the answer will be because Hiccup is hot.
No,
Fair
no.
enough. Fair enough. um, okay, so anything else we have to say regarding this topic? Except for we'll probably do another episode like this once Hidden World does come out and we've watched it enough times to really digest it and talk about it in the over-analytic way that we do.
Probably.
Always.
Okay, so with that said, that's been all for this episode of the Berkcast. We hope you enjoyed. How do you think How to Train Your Dragon 2 compares to the other DreamWorks sequels in terms of the formula and how it works? Whatever your thoughts are, you can tell us all about that in the comment section below, on Tumblr, where we are known as Berkcast Team, on our Twitter, where we are known as Berkcast with a capital B, capital C, and you can find all of us, hopefully healthier than what we are now, on the How to
Mm-hmm.
Train Your Dragon Valhalla Discord server. So until next time, I was H,
I was Rush.
And I've been Wolf.
and we will talk to you all next time. So take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.